Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another live stream. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So shout out to everybody who is in the room. Just so everybody knows, on Blacklight Revelations 1, this is a members only stream. All right. So if you are on Blacklight Revelations 1 and you are a member, you'll be able to watch this video and you'll be able to chat. Now, if you're not a member on Blacklight Revelations 1, you got a couple different options. You can watch it from some of my other social media, or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel Auditing Africa. And the YouTube channel Auditing Africa, the link to it is in the description box of this video. All right. So if you guys want to chat, you already know what to do. If you're a member on BLR1, you'll be able to chat. It'll be hidden on BLR1 for members only after the stream, but it will be public on Auditing Africa. All right. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to get into what's going on with this Niger coup. I should say. I'm sorry. So real quick before we get started, just want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. If everybody can and the visuals are looking good, give me a thumbs up in the chat. If they are not, then give me a thumbs down, and I will give a shout out to everybody who was in the building early. We got my man Carlton Way in the house. Shout out to Bronze the God, OG member, you know what I'm saying, for 24 months. Make sure you guys throw some radiation emoji in the chat and show him some love. My man been supporting the channel for 24 months. That is awesome and definitely appreciate it. Shout out to Carla Lockert. Shout out to Deneen Soul. We got Brooklyn Queen in the building. We got Denise in the building. Shout out to Denise. We got my man Edward Berry up in here. We got DC Precise in the house. Shout out to DC Precise. And we got my man Kid Gravity. Shout out to my man Kid Gravity. All right. It's good to see everybody. All right. So let's get into this. All right. We got an article here from Foreign Affairs. All right. And Foreign Affairs, I guess, is going to give us the quote unquote real meaning of Niger's coup. All right. And what they say is, will anger at the West entrench a new authoritarian order? Now, that's interesting, right? Let's break that down. Let me ask you guys a question. What issues might Niger have with the West? Too many to say, right? Well, don't be shy. Drop them all in the comment section, all right? So now here it says, after a group of senior military officers overthrew Niger's democratically elected president in July, the embattled but still alive Russian mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, and that's the guy, I believe he was the leader of the Wagner group, likened the coup to second a independence for the West African country. What happened in Niger is nothing other than the struggle of the people of Niger with their colonizers, he said in a voice message posted to Telegram, with colonizers who are trying to foist their rules of life on Nigerians and the conditions and keep them in the state that Africa was in hundreds of years ago. Now, that's interesting. That's very interesting, right? My question for you guys is, do you all agree with that assessment? Did I call you Carla, Val? I think Carla, yeah, Carla is actually watching from she's watching from Auditing Africa. You know what I'm saying? So ha Val. You know what I'm saying? Ha. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my man Jet Black. What's good with Jet Black, an OG member? So make sure y'all show him some love. Definitely appreciate you, bro. So now here it says, perhaps unsurprisingly, Prigozhin's take on the push contrasted sharply with that of most African leaders, North American and European governments, the European Union, and the Economic Community of the West African states, all of which harshly condemned the military takeover. Now, let me ask you guys a question as far as the quote-unquote military takeover goes. We all know that Western media is going to put their spin on it, right? My question is, what is the accurate spin? What is the accurate spin? If you ask me, many countries in Africa have a banana republic or an installed government. So, and those banana republics and those installed governments are basically, they serve the same purpose as the democratic shills serve here in the United States. You know what I'm saying? They're basically put there to keep the people in check and to funnel resources and power to the Western governments. You know what I'm saying? If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. So now it says, but the Wagner mercenary chief was not alone in portraying Western countries and especially France as having conspired to keep Africa in a permanent state of subordination. Now, so we already know what angle foreign affairs is taken, right? And the thing is that we know that the Western involvement in Africa are not because they're good guys. You know what I'm saying? It's not because they're good guys. So I might have to agree with what this guy Prisgazin, when he was alive, it was saying. Such is the prevailing view in Niger, which was ruled by France until 1960, where France stationed a large contingent of counterterrorism forces as a part of a deal with the previous government. The view is also widespread in ex-French colonies across the Sahel, where many people have grown disillusioned with the civilian governments they see as subservient to France and therefore welcome military leaders as a necessary corrective. Now, here's my question, and let me ask you guys this question. Yeah, Val. See, Carla's over there on Auditing Africa. You know what I'm saying? So my question for you guys is, how do you all feel about that? How do you all feel about that? What are you guys' thoughts on that? This perspective has two complementary facets, one critical of France and the West, and one welcoming of Russia, which has positioned itself as an adversary of the West and an ally of formerly colonized African countries. Okay. Now, here's the thing, right? If you ask me, it's arguable to say that those countries were quote unquote formerly colonized. If you ask me, if other countries are still in control of your economy and they benefit from your resources more than you do, well, if that's the case and if that's the situation, then technically you're still colonized, right? Oh, shout out to Carla. Carla came over to BLR. Both strains are gaining ground in the Sahel, manifested in Niger's coup, as well as a half a dozen others that preceded it in the region. These sentiments are rooted in righteous anger at France's continued sway over its former colonies and its counterterrorism policies in the Sahel, which have failed to deter the spread of jihadi movements across Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger in particular. France had partnered with the governments of each of these countries to fight terrorists before they were overthrown. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Was France actually fighting with terrorists? That's the question. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys show some love to Sybil, who just became a member. Shout out to Sybil for becoming a YouTube member. All right. Make sure you guys throw some radiation emoji in the chat and show Sybil some love. And I got to agree with Edward Berry. If you guys agree with Edward Berry, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. Edward Berry says they're trading one devil for another. And yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's why I always tell people to be very cautious when they use that analogy of quote unquote the lesser of two evils, because there's really never a quote unquote lesser of two evils, right? There never really is. There's only evil. You know what I'm saying? So now next it says France had partnered with the governments of each of these countries to fight terrorists before they were overthrown. Now, again, I want to ask you guys, were these people terrorists? More than likely not. This is media coming with the Western slant. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, but such attitudes are not as deeply felt as they might appear at first glance. Elites and ordinary people alike across the Sahel remain attracted to the West, to its ideas, its economic largest, and its political orbit. Now, I would be more inclined to believe this statement had they, I don't know, came with a survey, a couple surveys where the data could be compared. But them just simply saying that, I would have to actually see that. Shout out to my man We Lit. What's good with it, bro? I would have to see that. You know what I'm saying? Not only do thousands of young people vote with their feet each year by migrating to Western countries, so they're weaponizing the quote unquote immigration talking point. All right. Now, here's my thing, right? I don't think that a lot of quote unquote young people migrate to Western countries simply because they agree with the West or because they like the West. I don't believe that. What I believe is that the West has created such deplorable conditions in most of these countries. They feel that it's necessary for them to have to move to the West in order to live a normal life. I don't think that they move to the West because they just quote unquote love the West. You know what I'm saying? I truly don't believe that. But the region's intellectual and political elite, many of whom were educated in Western universities. And again, now why would they be educated in Western universities? Let's ask that question. They don't add a lot of context, so we got to put the context in for them. Why would many of these people be educated in Western countries? We saw during the Ukraine conflict that a lot of people were going to Ukraine to get education as well. Why would they be educated in Ukraine? Why would they be going, quote unquote, to the West for education? In most cases, the reason why they would be going to the West for education is probably because there's not a lot of education facilities in the region. More than likely because they're resource starved as a result of Western colonization that is still in force today. Also remain fixated on the West, even if a growing number of them have convinced themselves it is the root of their problems. So again, how so if they feel that they've okay, let's just pause here. They have convinced themselves it is the root of their problems. Let me ask you guys a question. How many people in here would say that the West is the root of the problems in Africa? If that's something that you would say with confidence, give me a thumbs up. If it's not something that you would say with confidence, give me a thumbs down. Honestly, to me, if you're not somebody that says that the West is the root of Africa's problems, if you don't say that, if you don't believe that, then I don't know what kind of history, what kind of world history you have an understanding of. I think it's pretty obvious that the West is absolutely the root cause of Africa's issues. Okay. So now here it says all this suggests that although some level of anti-Western and pro-Russian feelings will likely endure, a convenient outlet for rage against political and economic stagnation, the most potent manifestations of this sentiment could eventually fade, giving France and other Western countries an opportunity to repair their standing in West Africa with a less heavy-handed approach to the region. A heavy-handed approach. Now, here's my question. Why would they quote unquote have a heavy-handed approach at all if they were welcome there? If they were welcome there, what's the need for a quote unquote heavy-handed approach? Is there one? Think about that. Niger's coup, which saw President Mohamed Bazoum replaced by a junta-led General Abdur Ahmed Tiani, was the latest in a series of military assaults on constitutionally elected governments in West Africa. Now, here's my question. Who wrote the West African Constitution, and were they actually constitutionally elected? Do you think that the Western media will give any insights to that? Probably not. The sixth in just the past 2 years, it shares many of the features of previous military takeovers in Burkina Faso, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and Mali, including the instance of its leaders that they were acting out of patriotic duty to save their country from the ravages of insecurity, corruption, and economic malaise. Another similarity concerns the roles of France and Russia. Okay. Now, a lot of these African countries are trying to be a part of the BRICS economic bloc, right? Now, the BRICS economic bloc is not very welcoming to Western countries, are they? My question for everybody is, why would BRICS not be welcoming to Western countries? That's my question. Why would BRICS not be welcoming to Western countries? Why would BRICS have an issue with Western countries? As with the previous pushes, this one featured the spectacle of young people trampling French flags and burning French President Emmanuel Macron in effigy while wrapping themselves in Russian flags and waving posters bearing the image of Russian President Vladimir Putin. I don't think that doing that is the best idea. You know what I'm saying? Like Edward said, trading one quote unquote devil for another. I don't think that that's the best idea to go about things. You know what I'm saying? I think that what those countries need to do is take full control of their resources and also take full control over their destinies and not really leave their destinies to those other countries. If you ask me, you know what I'm saying? But you guys may disagree. If you do, let me know in the comment section. Okay, let me see. The importance of these symbolic acts has perhaps been overstated, but they are clearly a reflection of real and growing animosity towards Paris across the former French colonies of West Africa. Now, let me ask you all a question. Do these quote unquote former French colonies have a legitimate reason to have animosity towards France? If they do, give me a thumbs up. If they don't, then give me a thumbs down. And shout out to Kid Gravity. Kid Gravity said, honest answer. Western countries would pit the global South against each other to become the new leader. Facts. I agree 110%. If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. I agree 100%. You know what I'm saying? Or they don't want them folks anywhere near them. And that could definitely be a situation as well. And people would be able to sympathize with that and people would be able to understand that. It would make perfect sense why they don't, right? Let me ask you guys a reason. Why would people in those regions not want, quote unquote, them folks anywhere near them? Is there a reason for that? Is there a history of abuse there? Why would that be the case? And real quick, shout out to everybody that's watching. If everybody could take a moment, smash that like button, hit the bell, and also share the stream from wherever you're watching, that'd be great. And also remember, on BLR1, the stream is going to be on members only after it's done. If you're watching on Auditing Africa, if you're subscribed to Auditing Africa, you'll be able to watch the replay publicly. You know what I'm saying? So French degage, all right, France degage, loosely translated as France get out, is the mood of the region. Dozens of anti-French rallies have been organized in recent years, especially in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Chad, Mali, Niger, and Senegal. Angry demonstrators have confronted French army convoys in Benin, Burkina Faso, and Niger, torched the perimeter of the French embassy in Burkina Faso and Niger, and defaced or destroyed monuments celebrating France's colonial past in Cameroon. Now, when those people came to Africa, did they not deface everything that was there? Did they not shoot the nose off of the pier, off of the Sphinx and all of that stuff? So my thing is, why do they feel that at some point people would not get tired of the status quo and want to change things to make it more conducive to the people who are already there? That's my question for you guys. The impetus for these protests had differed from place to place. In Burkina Faso and Niger, Much of the anger stemmed from the perceived coziness between the previous civilian governments and the French. Now, that would cause suspicion, right? You would look at that situation as suspect. If the current government is friends with the country that has centuries long of a record of abusing you, you'd kind of look at that as suspect, right? How many people would look at that as suspect? If you would look at that as suspect, give me a thumbs up. If you wouldn't look at that as suspect, give me a thumbs down. Honestly, if you ask me, I think that that's one of the reasons why people look at the United States as suspect. People don't like the history that we have as far as FBA, Black Americans, with the United States. You know what I'm saying? So make it make sense. And this is interesting, right? Locotina says Africans want independence and Black Americans want a free ride. The only free ride that Black Americans ever had was the free ride of the transatlantic slave trade to come to the United States. There's far more Black Americans that have two jobs than there are than white people that have two jobs. So when the group of people that uses the most welfare and only has a total of average of one job rivals our average of having 1.5 jobs, I'll entertain that as a comment. Let me ask you guys a question. How many white people do you know that have two jobs? How many Black people do you know that have two jobs? I'm just saying. So I find it interesting that the people that have an average of one job call the people that have an average of more than one job lazy. How does that work? How does that mathematically play out? Using basic math skills. It's interesting. You know what I'm saying, use your graphing calculator. Pull out your pull out your TI-83 and see what you come up with. Whereas in Cameroon, frustration stemmed from French criticism of the government and mishandling of a local conflict. Across much of the Sahel, the perception that French troops not only failed to curb Islamist insurgencies, but also fueled their spread has further poisoned the well. But beneath these specific grievances are resentments of an older vintage. Although the majority of West African and Sahelan countries gained their independence in the 1960s, France continues to wield substantial political and economic influence over former colonies. So now let me ask you guys a question. If France is ruling and wielding substantial political and economic influence over the former colonies, are those countries not still colonized? That's the question. That's the question. Now, here's another question. Who's more lazy? A group of people that had slaves for 400 years and still produces a generation of opiate addicts, or people that have fought for everything that they have in this country and still don't have the same access to the economy as other people and are still competing? Who's more lazy? Let me ask you guys a question. With all of the advantages that the people who started here in the United States had, how do you produce a generation of junkies? How does that happen? I mean, we really technically don't need to ask that question. We could just basically just watch, the last 25 to 50 years. But let's just entertain the question anyway. How does that happen? And I got to agree with DC Precise. DC Precise brings up an excellent and true point. They are not sovereign nations under those circumstances. Facts. And I gotta agree with Val. If you guys agree with Val, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with Val, give me a thumbs down. Val says PC people started calling FBA lazy when we no longer worked for free, which is interesting because if we were working for free, what were they doing? if we were working for free, what were they doing? You know what I'm saying? That's interesting. That's interesting. And drugs isn't an American problem. And it is specific to just one race. When it comes to black people face legal consequences of people who had drug possession and drug dealing. When it comes to white people, their drug use is looked at as a disease and they get methadone and over-the-counter Narcan, as well as clinical programs to help with quote unquote the disease of addiction, which you wouldn't know about a disease of addiction if you knew how to keep your hands off of heroin, fentanyl, meth, flocka, and other designer drugs. So it's not an American problem. The way that it's dealt with is an American problem. The way that it became developed is that they were overprescribed opiate narcotics as a result of medical apartheid. When you give one group of people ibuprofen and Tylenol to deal with surgery, and you give the other 50 milligrams of oxycodone every 2 hours to keep them comfortable, that's kind of what you get. Somebody should have read the label, and somebody should have read that piece of paper that comes with the pharmacy prescriptions. I'm just saying. Now, we're not saying that these people can't read, are we? I'm pretty sure anytime you buy some narcotics, it says these have addictive properties, use as directed. Because the FDA would have an issue with that, as well as the ATF would have an issue with that. I'm just saying. So now here it says it maintains agreeable ties with ruling families and elites, often in direct conflict with the popular desire for change. And in the minds of many, Paris continues to call the shots, manipulating the political and economic environment to favor elites who seem to have greater affinity for France than the citizens of their own countries. Now, why would the political elites have greater affinity for France than the citizens of their own countries? And let me ask you guys a question. Do you notice a similar problem when it comes to politicians in the United States? Are we dealing with similar issues when it comes to quote unquote Democrats? Because now here's the thing, right? Republicans can say whatever they want to say as far as why don't black people vote for Republicans, but the problem is that Republicans have made a history of being anti-black and also have been on a 60-year smear campaign against black people. And when you do egregious stuff like that, we don't really owe you anything. You don't deserve a vote. You didn't go on a smear campaign against anybody else. So it's okay for other people to vote for you, but you did go on a smear campaign against us. So once you strike first, we have to strike back, but in a different way. So you don't just get the vote automatically. So they can criticize how come we don't vote for them as much as they want. All they got to do is just go back into their history and look at when Ronald Reagan was the governor of California, and he worked with the NRA to block guns so that the Black Panthers weren't able to have guns, or when they decided to mock all of the anti-black killings, or when they decide to give people millions of dollars who delete black people. Any one of those things they can take their pick from, and then they can stop asking the question, well, how come you all don't vote for us? And also they can look at the fact that they haven't promised any damn thing. They can also look at the fact that their media outlets run a constant 24-hour smear campaign, right? And they can also look at the fact that they just flat out lie. And they're also trying to do an ethnic cleansing of our history. The Republicans are solely responsible as of right now for directly attempting to ethnically cleanse anything positive about black people in the public school system. So since they made the choice to do those actions, then they have to deal with the results that choice brings. And that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? There's no more, no less than that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a thumbs up. If it doesn't, give me a thumbs down. That's why I always tell everybody, as far as like, the no tangibles, no vote, and like the political stuff, just be very careful with quote unquote who people decide to, if you are going to vote, throw your vote to. Because if you ask me, just because the Democrats aren't doing anything, that doesn't mean that the Republicans are entitled to our vote. Honestly, before the Republicans get a wide spanning black vote, if you ask me, they need to go on a cleanup campaign. And then maybe after they've done the cleanup campaign, then maybe they'll just simply get consideration. You know what I'm saying? But it shouldn't be automatic, if you ask me. So now here it says, whether or not this perception is founded, France has not done itself any favors by repeatedly intervening militarily in the region. Between 1962 and 1955, France launched 19 separate military interventions in Africa. Since then, it has deployed troops on multiple occasions, including for major operations in the Central African Republic and Mali. Now, I find it interesting that they don't give any context as to why they did these military operations. But I'm going to ask you guys, why do you all think that they did these military operations? Why do you think France was so hell-bent on doing these military operations? That's my question. And although Paris defends such missions as necessary to guard its interests or protect legitimate governments, Africans tend to see French military actions as imperialism by another name. I mean, isn't it imperialism? Is it not imperialism? If they're not making the decisions and France is just coming in saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, that's imperialism. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Denise and shout out to Carla for hitting the Nightbot. And also shout out to Val for hitting the Nightbot. Definitely appreciate it. And I got to agree with Edward. You know what I'm saying? I got to agree with Edward. Keep the people in line. Big facts. And shout out to my man, Win, Lose, or Rug. Absolutely. Big facts. Make sure you guys smash that like button. If you guys haven't hit the bell, make sure you guys hit the bell. Throw some radiation emoji in the chat for Win, Lose, or Rug. Shout out to my man, Win, Lose, or Rug. What's good with it, bro? Win, Lose, or Rug said that YouTube unsubscribed him from my channel. So again, always make sure that you guys are subscribed to the backup channels, and also make sure that you guys are either part of the Discord or subscribed on Rumble or something, so that you're able to tell if you're unsubscribed from the channel, because YouTube be hating. You know what I'm saying? YouTube be hating, but it is what it is, though. They'll get theirs. And although Paris defends such missions as necessary to guard its interests or protect legitimate governments, Africans tend to see French military actions as imperialism by another name. Even where it has not become embroiled in conflicts, France has faced criticism for its sprawling network of military bases across Africa. Such installations have become unwanted reminders of treaties of military cooperation that were either signed in secret or are thought to have committed their African signatories to unfavorable political and economic terms. That Macron sought to claim anti-French feeling by promising in March to drastically reduce France's military presence in Africa speaks to the toxicity of the bases. Now, here's my question. Why didn't Macron just remove the bases? And I agree with Two Factor. If you guys agree with Two Factor, give me a thumbs up. Under imperialism, there is no such thing as legitimate governments. That's a fact. That's a big fact. Now, here's the question. You guys remember, and I'm probably, to be honest, like I said, I'm trying to get all this content out that I can as fast as I can. As soon as I get done with the after stream stuff, I'm probably we're gonna talk about the Israel stuff some more, because some more stuff came out. If you guys were in the last stream, the Undocumented Bros, I talked about how they confirmed that there were some Americans who had been kidnapped. But my question for you guys is, why Why didn't Macron just remove these military bases? The fact that Macron is actually thinking about moving these bases to attempt to try to calm down some of the quote unquote sediment in the region, it says a lot. Shout out to DJ Elmo. What's good with it, bro? It says a lot, doesn't it? Other symbols of France's enduring influence that rankle West Africans are the continued use of the CFA franc, the regional currency, a colonial holdover pegged to the euro, and the status of French as the official language in most former French colonies. Now, all of these symbols that they're talking about, right? My question for you guys is, what do these symbols imply? What do those symbols imply? They have to imply something, and I guarantee you it's probably not something that the people that live in those areas want to look up and see every day. Edward says they won't let Africa center their military, form their own nuclear programs or economy. Right, facts. And if they won't allow them to do that, then what does that mean that the ultimate goal is? The ultimate goal is that they're trying to keep France subordinate. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to DJ Elmo. DJ Elmo said it's about 5 a.m. in the UK, so struggling to stay awake. It's all good, bro. It's all good. Trust me, I know the feeling. You know what I'm saying? I'm a night owl though, so now here it says, when in July, Mali dropped French as its official language, demoting it to a working language and replacing it with 13 local languages. The largely symbolic move was hailed in some quarters as a long overdue nod to national identity. Now, here's my question. Why shouldn't these people be allowed to have their national identity? And just like how you're hearing about how, quote unquote, Israel has its, quote unquote, natural right to defend itself and its natural right to be a sovereign independent nation. I don't think that Israel has ever been colonized before, but the people that back Israel have all colonized many countries in Africa, as well as many countries across the world. Why don't you ever hear those countries and their media talking about how these countries that they've colonized in the past having their right to live as independent and free people? The reason why you don't hear that is because they do not believe that those people have those rights. They don't believe that those people should have the sovereign ability to live as independent people. They do not believe that. They don't agree with that. You know what I'm saying? That's why they don't say it. So now here it says, but if the rise of anti-French sentiment has much to do with Paris's past and present meddling in Africa, it must also be viewed against the backdrop of broader anti-West sentiment on the continent. Now, again, I want you guys to list in the comments section, why would Africa have a anti-Western sentiment? Is it because the people of Africa are just quote unquote anti-white? Because that's what the Western media would want you to believe. Oh, the anti-white sentiment is just growing across the world. Well, let's ask the question, why might that be? Starting with these countries that we're talking about here in Africa. Why might Africa have a anti-Western sentiment? Is there a reason, or are these people just born naturally to hate people who are different than them? It's not the African people that display that trait. I'm just saying. Although such feelings are similarly rooted in the colonial past, their recent ascendance can be traced in part to the rise of the discourse of decoloniality among the African intellectual and to some degree policymaking elite. Now, here's my question. Who are the elites of Africa? That's my question. Who are these people? Now, I have a different theory. I have a different theory. And my theory is that it seems like across the entire United States and across the world, even, people are starting to wake up, and the people that have been the victims of colonization are starting to realize that there's no level of logically convincing these people that they've done anything wrong. So in order to take control of their destinies, they are starting to no longer use political means. They're starting to use action. That's what it seems like to me. Although such feelings are similarly rooted in the colonial past, their recent ascendance can be traced in part to the rise of the discourse of decoloniality among the African intellectual and to some degree policymaking elite. Skeptical, if not disdainful, of the original decolonization movement that powered African political independence, this school of thought posits that formerly colonized countries remain in thrall to Western epistemologies and ideas, the upshot of which is that notionally independent African countries, in fact, have little or no agency. Now, how do you all feel about that statement? If you ask me, there's nothing opinionated about that statement. That statement, if you ask me, is 100% fact. And I agree with Kid Gravity. They tolerate disrespect and facts, two-factor, rich people who are subservient to the crown. And I think that that's one of the reasons why a lot of the people who are civilians there are tired of these puppet governments. For decolonial scholars, the only solution for ex-colonies to renounce Western philosophies and frameworks in favor of supposedly indigenous ones. So now this is interesting. Why are they saying supposedly indigenous ones? Why are they why are they saying supposedly indigenous ones? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys haven't smashed the like button, please take a moment. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Also, if you guys have not hit the bell, please take a moment. Make sure you guys hit the bell and share the stream to your social media. For all of its glaring incoherence, decolonial. So now they're saying that it's incoherent. That's it. This is interesting. So the only way that African people can live, according to Foreign Affairs, is by the quote unquote colonial rules of law. This is interesting. I really wish that I had somebody that I could interview from this region and actually have them, listen to this article and, counter some of the points. You know what I'm saying? For all its glaring incoherence. Now, remember, this is the article saying this. Decolonial discourse has captured the imagination of not just the African Academy, as attested to by the sheer volume of books, journal articles, and conference presentations purporting to decolonize one thing or the other, but also the real world of African policymaking, international aid, and diplomacy, all of which have been the targets of similar decolonization efforts. Now, why would people want Africa to remain colonized? What's the benefit in that? DJ Elmo says, I like how the Mali military guy that took over wears a desert sand mask, totally looking like a badass villain. Facts. And isn't that interesting? Carlton says, now they are kicking out these European countries just to make room for Asian colonization. Facts. I agree with that. You know what I'm saying? If you guys agree with Carlton, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. That's exactly what's happening. And if you guys have watched any of the content on the Auditing Africa channel or any of the Auditing Africa content that's in the Auditing Africa playlist, we've literally been saying that since day one. You know what I'm saying? Paradoxically, by seeking to purge Africa of Western ideas, decolonial discourse has fueled an African fixation with the West, albeit a negative one. Now, what I find interesting is that this article doesn't talk about the West's fixation on Africa. Is there anything that you guys can tell me about the West's fixation on Africa? What's up with the West's fixation on Africa? It has promoted a view of the West as essentially toxic, leading to look at this, leading to an absurd rejection of supposedly Western ideas such as democracy and human rights, and a reflective embrace of Russia and China simply because they are seen as adversaries of the West. Is it that simple? This is a very biased article. These people don't like non-white people taking control of their own destinies. They don't like it. These people literally believe that it is their, I guess since they believe in a God-given right to rule over other people. And shout out to other people for starting to finally reject that idiotic idea. You know what I'm saying? It's just a shame that they're trading one colonizer for another. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says Moscow now in its second coming as Africa's improbable savior, which here's the problem right here. Never accept a savior. Never, ever accept a savior. Always save yourself. Would you guys agree? It is never, ever a good idea to be accepting of a savior. Never put yourself in a situation where you can say you owe somebody. If you ask me, that can be very detrimental. And I gotta agree with Val. Val says the West doesn't want to give up access to all the natural resources in Africa. They also believe that they're entitled to it. The West, Europe, and Asia believe that they're entitled to what's in Africa. And here's the news flash: they're not. Moscow, now in its second coming as Africa's improbable savior, is the unlikely beneficiary of this. Now they're calling it historical tunnel vision that celebrates Russia's material and moral support for African nationalists and independence movement, but somehow neglects its own identity as a colonial power. Now that's interesting, right? Because Russia may be doing what they're doing economically, and we all know that Russia is shady, but I don't know if Russia has a history of invading Africa, and I like how this article is just completely leaving out that part of history that the French, invaded Africa. And I gotta agree with Two Factor. This is facts. This is one of the reasons why you should never accept a savior. Saviors don't come for free. It will always be a one-sided deal. It'll always be a one-sided deal where people attempt to manipulate you. And shout out to Denise. Appreciate you catching the replay. Make sure you get you some good sleep. So now here it's saying that they can't quit the West. As pervasive and politically salient as it is, anti-Western sentiment may not actually run that deep. The behavior of African elites suggests resentment toward the West is more often tactical than genuinely felt, a useful tool for rallying public support, but not an indication of any real desire to forego the benefits of good relations with Europe and North Africa. Now, this is interesting, right? Let me ask you guys a question. Have African countries ever had a quote unquote good relationship with Europe and North Africa? How many white European slaves did North Africa ever give any of the African countries? How many resources, natural resources, did the Europe ever trade with Africa? Yeah, exactly, Two Factor. Remember the deal Lando made with Darth Vader? Same shit. And that's exactly what the Galactic Federation represents. You know what I'm saying? The Galactic Federation definitely represents galactic colonization. Notwithstanding the protestations of decolonial scholars, research, and debate within the African Academy continue to be shaped by ideas, philosophies, frameworks, and methodologies of Western ancestry, and African universities, think tanks, and non-governmental organizations continue to depend on Western sources for financial support. So again, if you ask me, this is one of the reasons why they need to detach completely from this quote-unquote dependence for financial support. In other words, the African Academy needs its imagined antagonists to survive. Now, I disagree with that. But pay very close attention to how this article is being written. You know what I'm saying? Moreover, African intellectuals continue to flock to universities in the West. An estimated 20,000 African academics and researchers relocate to Western countries every year, an implicit acknowledgement of the, look at this, superior conditions and pay at European and North American universities, and of the better research and professional opportunities that they offer. So now how do you deal with this situation right here, with this media outlet saying this? How do you deal with that? If you ask me, like I said, when it came to the Ukraine situation and all of those people were going to Ukraine to go to medical school, that's a bad look. Would you guys agree? That's a really bad look. So now the question is, why don't they build their own schools and education institutions? Some of these scholars have returned home to Africa to join the ranks of the economic and political elite, although a growing number of them have elected to remain in the West. And even those who find it expedient to denounce the West rarely want to give up the perks of travel and business relationships in Western countries. So, as you guys can see, when it comes to quote unquote the West, what it's about is economics. So now my question is, why don't people build up their own economic systems so that they can be outside of these Western controlled economic systems? Does that make any sense? Why do they not do that? It doesn't make any sense. Make it make sense. This is interesting. I'm just looking at my StreamYards and it's saying that the title for this stream is invalid. You know why? I bet you this is stupid. Hold on real quick. Let me see. Give me 1 second, guys. Real quick. If you guys haven't smashed the like button, please take a moment. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit the bell, make sure you guys hit the bell. So on Twitch, you can't use the word Niger in the title. They have that blocked. Make it make sense. So now here it says, as with African intellectuals, so it is with the political elite. They boast about sending their children to expensive educational institutions across the Western countries, visit hospitals in top Western countries, and preside over the affairs of countries that rely on substantial Western aid to meet basic needs. Foreign aid is thought to account for a quarter of Niger's spending, and the European Union says only 62% of the country's annual budget is funded domestically. So now here's my question. What do you guys think that Niger would be able to do to change that? Yeah, I had to change it to what's going on in Africa and what did the USA do today on Twitch in order for the stream to go live on Twitch. So now here it says poor Africans continue to immigrate to the West in large numbers as well, often taking enormous risks to do so. According to the UN Refugee Agency, more than 2,000 migrants from Africa perished or went missing in the Mediterranean in 2022, a more potent and tragic symbol of the continuing appeal of the West is hard to imagine. Now, what do you guys think about that? Would you all say that that's an indication of quote unquote Western appeal, or would you say that that's people doing what they have to do to survive? That's my question. The surge in anti French and anti Western sentiment sweeping Africa is certainly real, reflecting a pervasive sense of powerlessness that lingers even 60 years after most countries achieve their independence. But beneath it lurk more ambivalent attitudes and even an enduring attraction to the West. This suggests that Western countries could take ameliorative measures to improve their standing in the region. An earnest disavowal of the kind of realpolitik that has driven French and other Western countries to embrace a great many dictators would be a good place to start. Now, here's my question. If France and the Western countries are all about democracy, as they say, how can democratic countries embrace a dictator? And why would they embrace a dictator? Does that make any sense? That doesn't make a lot of sense. In the long run, however, it will be up to African countries to recognize that anti-Western sentiment, no matter how heartfelt, can never be a substitute for honest introspections about the reason for Africa's continued struggles and taking responsibility for the continent's development. Isn't that interesting? So the reason why Africa is in the state that it's in is because of African people. Let me ask you guys a question. Does that sound familiar? Western countries didn't do anything wrong ever except for make Africa a better place. Make that make sense. Make it make sense. So now let's see what the United States is doing. Let's see what the United States is doing. How many people knows what the United States did today? This is what the United States did today. The United States declares the military takeover in Niger a coup. And they just did this today. The Biden administration had sidestepped the label for months because the word coup has major policy implications. All right. So again, this just took place on October 10th of 2023. So this is something that happened today. So I think that is interesting that they decided to do this amidst the issues going on in Israel. Okay. The Biden administration formally acknowledged on Tuesday what most countries declared months ago, that the military takeover in Niger in July was a coup. Officials in the administration had sidestepped that declarations for weeks because the word coup has major policy implications. Congress has mandated that the United States must halt all economic and military aid to any government deemed to have been installed by a military coup until democracy is restored. So now here's my question. What does that paragraph mean? I think that is interesting that they decided to do it today. And what I think is actually going to happen is I think that whatever aid that Niger was getting, it's going to get rerouted to Israel. They're going to try to utilize as much as they possibly can and redirect it to there. You know what I'm saying? If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with that, give me a thumbs down. But on Tuesday, the administration said that efforts to restore Niger's democracy or democratically elected government to power had failed, and that what aid was not already restricted would be cut off. So they made a policy decision that Niger's aid is going to now be cut off. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that Niger is going to just say, okay, well, that's fine, we'll take aid from Russia? That's probably what we're going to see. And what comes with that is that Russia will probably get Niger's voting in UN. And it's just interesting how things are starting to shift. But again, what side of issues does the United States always take? They have a pattern, right? And patterns can't be ignored. So when it comes to these kind of issues, the question is, what is the pattern of what the United States does? What do they do? In most cases, when dealing with issues and situations like this, what does the United States do? The United States always goes with the country who is on the side of what? The United States has concluded that a military coup d'etat has taken place in Niger. Matthew Miller, the State Department spokesman, said in a statement. He added that nearly $200 million in aid was temporarily paused in August and it will be suspended. About $442 million in trade and agricultural assistance will also be suspended. Okay. Humanitarian food and health assistance will continue, Mr. Miller said, noting that the resumption of other U.S. assistance would require the junta to usher in a democratic governance in a quick and credible time frame. So let me ask you guys a question. What do they mean in that sentence there? To usher in democratic governance in a quick and credible time frame. What does that mean? And here's my question. If the government has been removed, how are they going to do that? And honestly, here's the question. Do they care about doing it? I don't think they really care about what the United States has to say anymore. I think that was one of the main points of doing this. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, notable is what else will not change. The new United States ambassador to Niger, Kathleen A. Fitzgibbon, will remain at the United States Embassy in Niamey, Niger's capital. Some 1,000 American military personnel will stay in the country at 2 bases. And while U.S. counterterrorism training in Niger has been suspended, the Pentagon will continue to fly surveillance drone flights to protect U.S. troops and alert the authorities if a terrorist threat is detected. Now, that's interesting. I could see some issues occurring with that. I could definitely see some issues occurring with that. A coup designation allows us to both express disapproval of what took place, including via the suspension of security assistance in certain accounts, but also to move on and establish a working relationship with the new authorities who, however they came to power, are now there, said J. Peter Pham, a former U.S. special envoy to the Sahel region of West Africa. France began withdrawing its first troops from Niger on Tuesday, weeks after President Emmanuel Macron said he was recalling his ambassador and would order the return of 1,500 troops posted in the country. France's decision came after weeks of escalating tensions between France and the new military leaders in Niger who seized power in a coup in July. Now, let me ask you guys a question. What events do you all think would create escalating tensions between France and the new military leaders? What do you all think happened that could have caused these issues between France and the new military leaders? That's the question. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to everybody that's watching. We got 26 people watching on BLR, and we got 7 people watching on Auditing Africa. If everybody can take a moment, smash that like button. Also, make sure you guys hit the bell and share the stream to your social media. That would definitely be great. It also capped years of waning influence for France, a former colonizer in West Africa whose economic presence and military clout in the region remains considerable, despite being increasingly challenged by juntas and foreign powers like Russia. In Washington, the Biden administration had held out increasingly dim hopes that the military junta would reverse its takeover and agree to restore a democratically elected government. Now, here goes my question. Is France a democratically elected government there? It's like, is France a democratically elected government there? You know? Last month, Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken met with the leaders of several nations that are members of the Economic Community of West African States, a regional group that has been pressuring Niger's military leadership to relinquish power under the threat of a military invasion. So again, why? Do we have any reason of why they should relinquish their power? Shout out to DJ Elmo. DJ Elmo says the aid cut. Biden administration will divert it to ECOWAS, the West African Union, to directly fund them to invade Niger with African soldiers or fund the terror group. I agree. If you guys agree with DJ Elmo, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. And we'll definitely be keeping track of that. So if you guys see anything that discusses that particular type of situation or event taking place, make sure you guys, tag me in it, or make sure you guys put it in the Discord. Okay. The Biden administration has tried to avoid conflict that could spill across the region. In a description of the meeting, the State Department said attendees were united in their position that the National Council for Safeguarding the Homeland in Niger, the country's ruling military genre, must release President Mohamed Bazoum, his family, and all those who are unlawfully detained. Mr. Bazoum and his family have been detained since he was ousted in July. After the coup, most Western countries suspended their aid and security partnerships with Niger, whose leader was seen as one of the last reliable allies in a region now dominated by men in uniform. Now, if the United States military and France's military were behind the scenes running the affairs of what were going on in Niger, wouldn't it be safe to say that it was already an area ruled by men in uniform? So now here's my question. What's the difference between these men in uniform versus the French and American militaries in uniforms? That's the question there. As Western countries have recalled troops training Nigerian soldiers in recent weeks, the future of Western involvement in the Sahel region south of Sahara, the world's epicenter of jihadist activity, remains uncertain. Niger's army has faced mounting losses since the coup, though analysts have warned that it is too early to tell whether the increase in attacks by armed groups are related to Western countries suspending their military partnerships. Last week, at least 29 soldiers were deleted in an attack carried out by jihadist militants in the country's west. A week earlier, a dozen had died in the southwest. For years, Niger has been battling insurgents linked with Al Qaeda and the Islamic State near the border with Mali and Burkina Faso in the west, and Boko Haram in the south in the region neighboring Nigeria. While the security situation has rampantly deteriorated since the coup, millions of Nigerians are suffering from economic sanctions and border closures imposed by neighboring countries. The junta has also tightened its grip on society, silencing opposition voices and arresting a prominent journalist, Samira Sabu, last week. Niger is a key transit country to the migration route to Europe. And in recent years, the European Union has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into buffering its northern areas with centers for migrants and repatriation flights. So now repatriation flights basically means bringing bringing those migrants back to their countries of origin. That's what that means, right? Because that's what we have going on here in the United States when it comes to what the United States chose to do with those Haitian migrants. I think that the timing of the United States deciding to do this is very interesting. I don't think that it's by accident either. So here's what CNN had to say about it. U.S. Okay, there we go. Are you guys able to see the article on the screen? If you guys can see the article on the screen, give me a thumbs up. If you guys can't see it, give me a thumbs down. We're back. We're back. Locatina and DJ Elmo say there's no sound. If you guys can hear me, okay, give me a thumbs up. If you guys can't, give me a thumbs down. I think it should be okay now. Okay, you guys can hear me now. Okay, good. So let's see what we got going on here. The U.S. State Department, and we're going to look at what the State Department had to say, is preparing to officially designate the military takeover in Niger, excuse me, as a coup d'etat as soon as next week. So this article here came out on October 6th. Okay. This article came out on October 6th. But I don't think that they designated it a coup d'etat until today, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was just it's officially considered a coup d'etat now. Okay. The U.S. State Department is preparing to officially designate the military takeover in Niger as a coup d'etat as soon as next week, 3 U.S. officials told CNN, a decision which could have dramatic implications on the ability of the U.S. to work with a crucial counterterrorism partner in the region. The department is set to announce that the U.S. will be suspending certain forms of assistance to Niger as a result of the coup designation, an official and another person familiar with the discussion said. The U.S. Embassy can continue to operate, and the U.S. military will be able to legally keep forces in Niger if a coup designation is made, U.S. officials said. But the Pentagon is still addressing how the change will impact the approximately 1,000 U.S. forces stationed in the country, officials said. So let's just deal with this. Why are there 1,000 U.S. forces stationed in the country? Why is that? That's a lot going on there. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Two Factor. You, you guys are putting some real good comments in the comment section. Two Factor says, there was a back channel conversation in order to gauge whether the new guy would play ball. He wasn't, so it's a coup. Facts. If you guys agree with Two Factor, give me a thumbs up. DJ Elmo says, funny, the American government don't call Wilmington in 1898 a coup, given WS. Yeah, facts. That's big facts. That absolutely was a coup. You know what I'm saying? Val says, Two Factor, DJ Elmo, thank you. They need to figure out some strategies to get rid of those colonial powers and train their own people. I'm not sure how they can get around the SLC-24A5. And that's a fact. That's a big fact. U.S. officials said it's unlikely that U.S. forces withdraw completely, and some will probably stay in a more limited intelligence gathering role. As we continue our diplomatic engagements to preserve civilian rule in Niger, we are continuing to assess additional next steps, but have nothing to preview at this time, a State Department spokesperson said. A Pentagon spokesperson declined to comment. I always think that is interesting when they decline to comment. I just think that that's interesting. To me, a lot of times is very telling when they decline to comment. Don't you guys think? The administration could continue with the life-saving and other kinds of assistance that are important for U.S. secretary interests, while simultaneously suspending other assistance to the government, including economic and security assistance. Those details are still being ironed out. Nigerian military leaders overthrew the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum, in July, but unlike some allies, the U.S. had been reluctant to formally label the takeover a coup, because it is a legal designation that would require the U.S. to restrict certain forms of foreign aid to Niger, most notably security assistance funding for Nigerian forces. Now, when it comes to this part here, I have to agree with Two Factor. I think what actually happened is that they held off, and then however that back channel conversation went, once they were able to gauge what was going to end up going on with that back channel conversation, and they saw that the back channel conversation wasn't going the way that they wanted, then they turned around and said, well, we're just going to declare this a coup d'etat because these people aren't playing ball the way that we want them to. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think. The coup designation could result in U.S. funding and support for the Nigerian military being cut off, which the U.S. military sought to avoid, even as France announced last week that it was pulling all of its troops out of the country by the end of this year. The U.S. has worked to support Nigerian forces for a decade to bolster their fight against terrorists in Africa's Sahel region, and the U.S. has several bases inside Niger from where it conducts counterterrorism operations. Like what? According to the U.S. Embassy in Niamey, since 2012, the Pentagon and State Department have provided Niger more than $350 million in military assistance, equipment, and training programs, one of the largest security assistance and training programs in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, see, shout out to my man Carlton Way, because that's what we're doing. We auditing Africa. We auditing all of this money that's going in and seeing how this money is being spent and used. Facts. Exactly. Shout out to DJ Elmo. Foreign aid equals all money ain't good money. When it comes to humanitarian aid and quote unquote humanitarian intervention, what happens a lot of times in those situations? Shout out to Zentober. What's good with it, bro? What happens in a lot of those situations when it comes to the quote unquote humanitarian aid? A lot of times that humanitarian aid doesn't necessarily go the way that it's advertised. A lot of times things go kind of haywire, wouldn't you guys say? There's a lot of times when that stuff goes haywire. And shout out to Carla and shout out to Brooklyn Queen for answering the Nightbot. And I gotta agree. Edward Berry. If you guys agree with Edward, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. Carlton said, where them dollars at? Rest in peace, Gangsta Boo. Where them dollars at? Edward said, this is what happens when you don't have control of the narrative. Niger has no media to combat the BS. Facts. Super facts. You know what I'm saying? But U.S. law requires that funds appropriated by Congress for training and equipping a foreign military must be restricted in the event that a quote-unquote duly elected country's leader has been overthrown by that country's military. Okay. There has been frustration in Congress with the administration's lack of communication with the Hill and the administration's slow decision-making process, a person familiar with the discussions said. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said in Djibouti last week that U.S. still has essentially the same footprint in Niger as it did before the takeover and has continued conducting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions for the purposes of protecting the U.S. forces still stationed there. My thing is, if it's that bad, why don't they get them out of there? But he said the U.S. has not resumed any operations with the Nigerian force, or I'm sorry, with the Nigerian forces, not the Nigerian, the Nigerian. The U.S. military mission in Niger is one of the main reasons why the U.S. held off so long on legally declaring the situation a military coup d'etat, instead engaging in extensive diplomacy to try to reverse the Nigerian military takeover, officials previously told CNN. But those diplomatic efforts haven't been successful, and the military is still in power. We've come very close to say again, this is an attempted coup. Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said on August 15th when asked why the U.S. has not made a legal designation. I think by all means, from State Department, from DOD, from other levels of government, we are trying to work through this in a peaceful manner. As you know, Niger is quite a critical partner to us in the region. What that means when they say Niger is quite a critical partner in the region, what that basically means is that they are exploiting Niger for something. That's basically what that means. And more than likely, it's because of that uranium deposit. Facts. Shout out to DJ Elmo. DJ Elmo says, Blacklight, U.S. military is not leaving. They can't let go of that uranium deposit. Facts. If you guys agree with DJ Elmo, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with DJ Elmo, give me a thumbs down. The Secretary of State could issue a waiver to reinstate military aid once a coup is determined, but only if he decides that it is in the national security interest of the United States and consults with Congress first, according to the Congressional Research Service. Congress, for the first time last year, incorporated the waiver into its 2023 omnibus spending bill. Senior Pentagon officials believe that keeping a presence in Niger is vital to the efforts to tackle terrorism in the region and believe that it's feasible even amid the domestic political turmoil there. Now, let me ask you guys a question. How long has the United States and how long have France been in that region? How long have they been in Africa, period? They've been in Africa for a very long time, right? Now, my question is, with them being in Africa for so long, why is it that they can't get the situation under control? What's the problem? What's taking so long? What are they doing? With the power that the United States allegedly has militarily, they should easily be able to deal with a lot of these issues. But for whatever reason, it seems like they're not able to. They're having a lot of difficulties. Yeah, like centuries. So what's taking so long? What's the problem? Several of the junta's leaders have worked with and been trained by the U.S. as part of the U.S.'s security cooperation with the country, current and former officials told CNN, and the Nigerian military leaders have not voiced anti-American sentiment or ask the U.S. to leave. But I find it interesting, though. Look, there go your girl Bobert. But they've it seems like they're still allowing the United States to be there, but for whatever reason, the United States says we're taking the money. So it's just interesting dynamics and a lot of unclear information, which I don't think that we're going to get any clear information. You know what I'm saying? So next, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what the United States Department of State has to say about it. Okay. So this is from the U.S. Department of State, and this came out on October 10th. And what it says is military coup d'etat in Niger. All right. And this is what the United States' official statement on this is. The United States has concluded that a military coup d'etat has taken place in Niger. Pursuant to Section 7008 of the Department of State's Annual Appropriations Act, the United States is suspending most U.S. assistance to the government of Niger. Okay, so basically, Niger's government is being taken off the payroll as a result of this. And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, shout out to everybody that's watching. We got 8 people watching on Auditing Africa. We got 29 people watching on BLR, and we got a couple people watching other places. If everybody can take a moment, smash the like button, and also hit the bell, and please share the stream to your social media, that would be great. On August 5th, the United States temporarily, so this happened back on August 5th, before any of this, the United States temporarily paused certain foreign aid assistance programs to the government of Niger, totaling nearly $200 million. So you keeping track of that, Carlton? $200 million right there. Okay. That assistance is now also suspended pursuant to Section 7008 of the Department of State's Annual Appropriations Act. We also note the Millennium Challenge Corporation's suspension of all assistance to Niger. Now, what is the Millennium Challenge Corporation? We also note the Millennium Challenge Corporation's suspension of all assistance to Niger, including all proprietary work on its $302 million Niger Regional Transportation Compact and all new activity on its 2018 compact. So I'm curious as to what the Millennium Challenge Corporation is, because I'm not exactly sure what that is. 2 scunted big ones, facts. Yeah, that's big facts, DJ Elmo. DJ Elmo says Niger leaders being trained by the U.S. military, them turning around against the U.S. is like a plot from the spook who sat by the window. Facts. Super facts. We underscore that we will maintain our life-saving humanitarian food and health assistance to benefit the people of Niger. The United States also intends to continue to work with regional governments, including in Niger, to advance shared interests in West Africa. Now, I'm curious, what interests do they share? I find it really interesting that in a lot of these situations, when they talk about these things, they leave the wording of this stuff very vague. It's always very vague. They never really go into detail and say exactly what it is that's going on. Now, my question to you guys is, why do you think that that might be? So now here it says, we stand with the Nigerian people in their aspirations for democracy, prosperity, and stability. Since the coup, we have supported the economic community of Western African states' efforts to work with Niger to achieve a return to democratic rule. Any resumption of U.S. assistance will require action by the National Council for Safeguarding the Homeland to usher in a democratic governance in a quick and credible time frame. So again, what this right here sounds like to me is that the United States will be giving up money to anybody who can install in a leader that is favorable to U.S. interests. And if they don't, then they're not going to resume the aid. That's what that kind of sounds like to me. You know what I'm saying? The United States reiterates its call for the release of Mohammed Bazoum, his family, and all of those detained. So I'm interested to see what ends up happening with this situation. My question for you guys is, what do you all think will happen with this situation? Let me know in the comment section. All right. So for people who are watching on BLR, if you're not a member, the link for Auditing Africa is in the description box. You'll be able to visit that link temporarily, or you can go to the channel section of the page and find Auditing Africa. You'll be able to watch the replay there. The replay will be up and public on Auditing Africa, but for BLR members, you will have access to watch this as a member and comment as a member to this stream from your membership. All right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure that you guys leave lots of comments. If you're not subscribed to either channel, make sure you take a moment, subscribe to the channel. Also, it's important. Make sure that you guys either follow me on Rumble, Twitch, or Discord. All right. I appreciate everybody. We got 3 stream sponsors, so shout out to the stream sponsors. We got Bronze the God supporting the channel for 24 months. Make sure you guys show him some love. Throw some radiation emoji in the chat. We got Sybil, who decided to become a member. Shout out to Sybil for becoming a member. Membership is a really good deal. It's only 99 cents for anybody who's interested in becoming a member. You get lots of benefits for the 99 cents. And shout out to my man Win Loser Rug with the $4.99 super chat. So make sure you guys show all of them some love. Definitely appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I'll probably be back a little bit later with some more coverage of what's going on with the Israel versus Hamas thing. And I will catch you all on the next one. All right. Peace.